This is another Writing for the Bible brand, and I want to talk about the role of the family, the value of the family. And of course, my horse is MC Hammer. Playing with the cat horse is his bloodline, and he's really patient with me, but that is, he told me if I keep it short, so we'll keep it about 8 minutes. But be that as it may, I do want to talk about the role and the value of the family. And we're looking at it from the standpoint of Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 and following, where God says, let us make man in our own image. And so we are told that when God made man in his own image, not only so, but he gave man dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the heaven, every creeping thing that walks upon the face of the earth. So God made man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. That's verse 27. Then we come to Genesis chapter 2. So this is the origin of the family. Where did the family originate? Right here, Genesis chapter 2. This is at creation. Now God made woman from the rib of Adam, brought her unto the man, and he said, this is now bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of the man. And Moses summarizes it saying, therefore shall a man leave his father and mother, and cleave, stay with his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. There are a lot of truths that we can see in this passage, but a couple of things we'll mention real quickly, and that is, number one, the origin of the family, the origin of marriage, is right here in God's creative act in the beginning. And this is something that is so fundamental, not only to a biblical understanding, but also to Western culture that has been founded upon biblical principles. Not only so, but the family is composed of a mother and a father, a husband and wife. That is only two. The two shall become one flesh. Polygamy has been eliminated. So also divorce and remarriage, God said, is not my plan from the beginning. We don't want that to be the case. Jesus referred to that in Matthew chapter 19, verses 4 through 6. And he referred back to this very passage in the book of Genesis. But here we have an interesting situation that has developed within the last couple of hundred years. And that is that the socialist left has continued to attack the family. And we need to see why. Socialism, communism, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, writing the Communist Manifesto, said they were socialists. They said they were actually scientific socialists. There was nothing scientific about it, actually. No science to it. It's all philosophy. But be that as it may, they said the primary thing was to get rid of private property. That is, abolish private property. We abolish private property, then everybody's going to get along, because everyone will have the same amount of goods, everyone will have the same amount of abilities, the same amount of privileges, and they'll be able to not have envy, because envy is the problem that we have in society. That was their basic thesis. And so we've got to get rid of private property, and we have to get rid of the idea of God. Well, why were they so interested in getting rid of God? Well, of course, it was based upon an atheistic philosophy. Communism, socialism is rooted in atheism. And that is exactly how they put it. But thinking about now the redistribution of properties. Friedrich Engels wrote a book regarding the abolition of the family, the abolition of private property, and inclusive of the family. And he pointed this out. He said that the abolition of private property includes the abolition of the family. Why? Because a husband cannot belong, property, to a wife. A wife cannot belong to a husband. And more importantly, children cannot belong as property, because there's the concept of private property right there. You can't have children belonging to parents. You can't have that taking place. So what are we going to have to do? Engels, Marx, socialism. I have a book by Spargo and Arner, The Elements of Socialism. They say the same thing. We've got to get rid of the nuclear family. That's how they put it, the nuclear family. And as a matter of fact, the women's rights movement today in the universities, such as at Harvard, there's a woman there who says we need to get rid of the nuclear family. Where did she get the terminology? She got it from socialists. By the way, that terminology comes up in Black Lives Matter also. That's on the front page. Get rid of the nuclear family. That means mom, dad, and the kids have got to go, because it embodies the concept of private property. When you have children, then you train them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, and they are your property, and they belong to you. Your children are part of you and they belong to you, but that cannot be with this system. Consequently, the abolition of the family is what socialism advocates. So pure socialism is abolish the family, and what are we going to do with children then? Well, what we're going to have to do with children, they suggest, well, we'll put them in large groups, and we'll have to have people that manage them like sheep herders, and just kind of help them out along the way. And all of this will free a woman up, because a woman must be freed to do socially productive work in the community. She must be able to work for the society, for the good of the motherland. She must work for the good of the whole. And so, since that be the case, and private property is hindering her from doing that, then that's what we've got to do. We've got to do it that way. Now, we're already on the way, well on the way to that in America. Sadly to say, that's part of what's taking place all around us in America. How did that happen? It happened under Obama's watch, primarily. That is one of the big legs of it, in 2015. And that was the Obergefell decision, in which we are told that same-sex couples may marry, and we're going to call that marriage. We're going to call it being married, and we're going to call it marriage, and we're going to call that a family. So there's the issue. Two men marrying, so-called, is that a family? Well, that's what our culture is telling us today. That's a family. Okay, if it's a family, do they have adoptive rights? Because we have something standing in the way of their producing children, don't we? Biology stands right in the way. You see, the left doesn't like science at all. Biology stands in the way. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to get rid of the families, so-called, as far as mom, dad, and the kids. And now we're going to have, in order for this kind of thing to go on, we're going to have adoptions for homosexual, that is same-sex couples. We're going to have to call that a family, and no biological attachment, not at least one of them, no biological attachment at all. So what does this mean? This means a complete revolution, not only of Western culture, but of that which makes freedom, and that is private property, that we can have a family, we can enjoy company, we can have children, we can train up our children in the way they should go, just as David wrote in the Psalms 127, as arrows in the hands of a mighty man, so are the children of youth, and children are a heritage from the Lord. Psalms 127, verse 3. So the important thing to note is a family is God-centered, it is God-given, it's God's heritage, inclusive of children. But America's on the other track, going in a socialistic direction, eradicating the idea of a family, eradicating the idea of any biological connection. That, ladies and gentlemen, is socialism, and it will destroy an entire culture. Now we need to go back to writing for the Bible brand and honoring a God-given family.